You're asking a question that Chassidim asked at Tzemach Tzedek, and the Tzemach Tzedek answered, quote, "It is given kalten brand." I think it's even in Teres Sholem, from the Rebbe Rashab Sichas, which means hot ice. That means he was standing like a marble statue. On the outside, you saw nothing. And inside, he was flame-fired. He was a Eish Yikid, a very, very powerful fire. Now, when you learn Chassidus about the question of noise and demonstrativeness versus quiescence and inner peace, peaceability, yeah? You find all kinds of contradictions, right? To give you a simple example, yeah? When a person cries, a cry which comes out with words, a cry which comes out without words, which we call the cry of the shofar, yeah? And then we say there's the kol de shtama and the kol de lo shtama, a voice which is coming out without words because it's a cry from the deepest level of the neshama, but at least it has a sound. And then you have the cry which has no sound. It's so deep, there's no sound coming out of it. Which is another case of this idea of there's a very powerful experience being experienced, and yet you see nothing, yet you hear nothing. So when it comes to this notion of a person having a very deep experience, and at the same time you don't see anything, there are two ideas. There's the classic idea, and then there's the anomaly. And it's, by the way, this is the very first page in the Hemshech Tafresh Lamachvav. It's about the Usad Liba and Tshuva. He makes this point. The classic idea is that when you're experiencing something overwhelming, you should go mad. When you experience something unbelievable, you don't believe it because it's not believable. It's very simple. Which means this: a human being is a receptacle. He's a keli. And this person has tools. He has a mind, he has a heart, he has senses that need to be sensitized and focused and engaged. These tools, the mind, the heart, and the senses, exist in a body. The body needs to be conditioned, right? Just like a person has to eat kosher and not treif. A person has to eat healthy and not sick. A person has to eat food but not too much. A person has to watch his health. A person has to not become so engaged in physical things, whether it's food or it's sleep, that it's verstoppt the cup. It convolutes the person's ability to reason. So there's a lot of conditioning that a person does as a human being of self-refinement, and you don't even necessarily perceive it as self-refinement, you simply perceive it as being a person. People don't sleep all day long, people don't eat all the time. People do these things in a way that serves their personhood. And when food becomes an entity unto itself, and sleep becomes an entity unto itself, it's a huge distraction and a deep compromise of what it means to be a human being. Because the human being is supposed to be involved in higher things. And the basic principle is the more conditioned one is, the better they experience overwhelming and transcendent experiences. In other words, if you're refined in your body and in your mind and in your heart and your senses, the way that Rambam describes it in Nishmei Neprakim, and also in the Chelik Beis of Meir Nevuchim, we talks about Nevuah. And it'll be Kitz and Nimitz and Perek Zayin of Hilchos, he said, Yateira, when something beyond you touches you, it's overwhelming to you. But your prior conditioning puts you in a position that you're drawn into it. Instead of it being overwhelming and flooding you out, it enchants you and raises you in. If a person is not conditioned, not their body and not their health and not their eating and not their involvement in materialism and not the development of the mind and the heart, and they experience an experience which is overwhelming, they're going to experience it in a very demonstrative way, in a very loud and external way. You can go crazy. Your body can't take it because there's a lack of conditioning. So when Moshe Rabbeinu stands at Har Sinai and the Rebbe the Tzemach Tzedek says that has given kalten brand, there's two parts to that. The first, of course, is he had this extraordinary experience which stunned him, which put him to a position of complete non-responsiveness. But on the other hand, he personally was so tuned in, was so conditioned from before, that he met that inspiration in such a way that he was totally at peace with it. All the other Jews also experienced Kriyas Yamsuf. Right? The Chazal say that the raw Shiv Chalaya Mashlaylo Cheskel Ben Buzi Godel Shabanavim, every Jewish human being, every maidservant experienced at Kriyas Yamsuf a nevuah that was greater than what Yecheskel Hanavi would experience. But it doesn't say what happened to them. If they were less conditioned, it was more overwhelming. And that's the chiddush of this statement of the Tzemach Tzedek, that the Moshe Rabbeinu's prior conditioning put him into a place that when the Eibishter gave him this incredible light, he received it in a totally peaceable way. Inside there was an incredible experience of power, and on the outside his guf was conditioned for it. That's the classic idea, what's called Rusa de Liber, of being conditioned for a transcendent experience, something which is bigger than you. You rise to the occasion in a quiescent, in a deep way, right? A person is unprepared, makes a lot of noise because there's a conflict between their person, their body, their receptacle, their mind, their heart and senses, and the enlightenment. But there's also such a thing of a person who's totally unconditioned, but the light that he's experiencing is so totally overwhelming that it shuts them down totally. Like the Baal Tshuva's cry, which is a kol ad lo shtama v'estach genucha genuch yelil yolil, which is the Baal Tshuva. Baal Tshuva is not properly conditioned. And nevertheless, there is an idea where he's also quiet. But that's not, I don't think, that's the pshat of Moshe Rabbeinu's quiescence.